Hello everyone, my name is Yuri Desktop, and today I want to make a quick unedited video about the settings that I'm using for my Simagic Alpha Evo. Simagic was very kind to send me this wheel for testing, and I'm gonna be honest, when I got the wheel, I was very excited at first, it felt great, and then I went to the software to adjust and get a bit more direct feel, get rid of some of the filters I was feeling. And to my surprise, the filters did not turn off. Um, the software, I can show you, it looks like this. Even running everything off like you see here, I know some people will say force feedback details, I've tried this on and off. Running everything off, it felt quite damped, quite filtered. And what do I mean with quite damped and quite filtered? And what was I exactly lacking? So if we would quickly go to iracing, sitting here in the first sector, and when I would drive, and I would have my right tires on the curb here, these curbs, like they have, what, like 10 centimeter drop. If I would drive over them, it didn't really feel like my tires were hitting them. It felt very smooth, especially in anti-cuts like this one on the inside here. If I would hit them, I didn't get like quick like bang, snap on the wheel. It felt more like my tires were half inflated, and I was like going over it, and I felt it, but it wasn't really taking the sharp hit of the curb, even with everything off. So I was testing, and I couldn't really get that feeling. Turning everything off, turning for feedback details that was supposed to help with these curve things to the max, to off. I talked to a bunch of people on Discord, wasn't happening. And they were a bit surprised. They even told me, like, maybe restart your computer, like there's something wrong. Well, there is nothing wrong. Then by my Simagic contact, I was told to manual firmware flash to 2.3.5. So they have two different live firmwares that's going on, which it is strange to me. I I I don't like where the firmware and the software affects the feeling of the bass so much, and an update changing the feeling of the force feedback that you're having so much. And when I looked more into it, when I looked more into YouTube reviews, when I looked more into stuff like that, more talking to people, apparently this happens quite a bit for Simagic. So this is now 9th of August, and I am glad to say that I found a combination of software and settings that makes, in my opinion, this bass feel amazing. I came from a Simucube 1, but I've tested VRS, Simucube 2, bunch of different things. This feels really, really good to me. I'm not saying it feels the best. I haven't tried the Simucube 3 properly outside of at an expo, but this feels really good to me. So what did I do? I manual firmware flashed this to 2.3.5. I'm in the sim manager, this long number ending with yeah. If I use it like this on, yeah, let's quickly touch on 60 versus 360 hertz force feedback. I tried 60 on 2.3.4, and it felt like when I was turning my wheel, I was like on sandpaper. It was like a chainsaw, like felt shit. I went to 2.3.5 on 360. It felt like sandpaper, like the curve feeling was there, but just turning the wheel when I was stationary. Maybe it's not updating quickly enough from iRacing, but it felt like sandpaper, like very harsh steps. So went to this, and I've tried 360 and 60 hertz on iRacing. I'm not sure yet what feels better. They feel very similar to me. But the magic fix for me was turning this filter level quite high to between 13 and 15, depending a bit what you want to feel like. So when I'm going to iRacing now, and I would have this on 13, I drive over these curbs here on the right, and I feel every individual bump. It feels nice. It feels exactly when I start to hit it, and when I go off of it, I can differentiate between that, and it helps me a lot lining the car up on corner entries. when I hit like anti-cut like this, I feel exactly like stuck. There's this sharp feeling that I'm looking for. When I'm on the exit here, I feel exactly when my tires would start leaving the curb and when they're still on it, which is very helpful for lining the car up on entries and exits. And you'll also know, like in a couple of chicanes here, if your inside tire starts hitting the curb, that's the edge of the slowdown. I didn't get that feeling before. And with this, I get that. The payoff, if you go a bit too low on this filter, so if I would go on 10 for example, if I start turning the wheel like this, quickly left and right, it doesn't feel smooth. You can feel the steps in the iracing force feedback without them being filtered or smooth. If you go too high on this, so let's say I would go to 17, then this feeling on the curbs starts to get muffled again. I start not really feeling it. And the weird part to me is when I use this on 13, 14, find the balance that you like between them, but when I was using 2.3.4 and I was having this filter on 0, so on 2.3.4 firmware, this filter on 0 felt the same damping as on 2.3.5 around 18, which I know Simagic sent this wheel, very appreciative of this, but to me that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It just zero damping in my mind should be zero damping, and I want to be customizable, fully in control of the force feedback that I'm getting. And with some of the firmware, it wasn't possible. And hopefully with 2.3.5 they're going into the right direction. But I've seen some reviews where after the review, apparently also from Boosted Media, a couple other guys, for example, they reviewed it, they said it was really quick, and then they added a bunch of damping filters that you couldn't really turn off in new software, and it changed the feeling of the bass, which to me is just crazy. Changing factory settings or default settings is one thing, but I would like to have one thing to turn them off. But on 2.3.5, running it like this, I would recommend 13. Everything else on off feels really good until you would get to a straight. And I had a similar issue. If you're running high force feedback, you'll always have this issue. But when you're running on a straight, and I'm running quite high force feedback, and for example I try to hold onto the wheel with one hand, it starts, yeah, you can, it starts shaking. And the fix that I have for it is that if I put mechanical inertia to about 50, if I then start shaking, I can back control it. So it starts shaking now with one hand, and I can back control it and get back to the hand easily, without really having this feeling that in the corners, if I need to do a quicker action, that it feels much slower. So only if I would do very, very quick reactions, it would get a bit of counterforce against it, but I don't feel this while driving. It only really helps on the straight. So I would test with that how much you want to make the wheel feel steady on the straight compared to maybe in these very, very quick reactions, counter-steer reactions, how much you want the wheel to be violent. For me, 50 felt really good. And that's pretty much it. I don't like to use any other dampings. It still feels like there's some filtering, some damping. Maybe it's this filter that's doing it. But if you run 2.3.5 on 0, it really feels like this no damping, no feeling, like direct signal, which I like to start with, and then you can change what you want to change. So I hope this helps. I hope if you test these settings, oh yeah, the other effects, I have everything off. So with this, it feels very nice to me. If you want some small friction, it also could feel nice. It makes the wheel a bit less violent when it starts to snap. There's a bit more friction to work against. This was feedback detail. For me, it just feels like artificial. I don't know. It feels like the spikes just get higher. But with this filter on this firmware, I don't really need the spikes to be higher. They feel very nice and natural to me on 0. And then this limit strength is just firm, where you hit the bump stops, which you pretty much never do anyways. So I don't really think that's a big difference. So if you're using Simagic, let me know how this feels. Make sure to have, I guess, the same software and firmware, because there's a lot of difference between these. And in the future, if they change these, I guess the settings will be updated again, which is less than ideal, but it is what it is. With these settings, though, as I said, I really like the bass. I don't think I'm getting the Simagic 1 back on. The reason I never upgraded to Simagic 2 or Simagic 3 is because with the settings I was running, I didn't feel like the Simagic 2 or 3 was really an upgrade to what I was running myself. And I think I showed that by running this wheelbase for 11 years, it was still very competitive. I could be very competitive with this. So that's my feelings. Quickly again, or at the end as well, my thoughts about the wheelbase. Summed up, the software is really what I wouldn't say killed it for me, but what's frustrating for me. The bass itself feels really good. With these settings now, I think it will be really good, but on 2.3.4, running all the dampers off and still having such a damped feeling, it was very strange to me. But it does feel very nice on 28. It does feel like it holds its forces much better than the Simagic 1 that I had because I was limited by the PSU. And I can control also the oscillations on the straight very well with this one. I think there's one like center damper, but this one didn't really feel good to me. One thing I will say is that these sliders here, they have much less effect than what I'm used to on Simicube. So inertia on Simicube I ran between 5 and 10, and here on 50 I get a similar result. Now, is that better or not? I think having more control over it than only using the first 10% is probably on the better end. Yeah, I think it's really good bass, especially for the price. There's a video on the main channel coming up soon about how much force feedback you should run, so look forward to that. And I guess subscribe to the channel for more quick videos like this, and the main channel will be for more edited, better, high quality content. Ciao.